In the quiet, humming stillness of St. Helena's intensive care wing, where machines breathed for those who could not, a young nurse named Elena Hart began another night shift she knew would drain her body but fill her soul with something she couldn't quite explain. Elena was 24, gentle-voiced, bright-eyed, and utterly dedicated to her profession, but nothing prepared her for the moment she first stepped into the private room of Adrian Crowell, the billionaire philanthropist who had been lying in a coma for nearly 60 days. His accident had shocked the nation, the mysterious car crash on a deserted road, the unanswered question of why a man worth billions was driving alone at midnight, and the odd detail that he had no known family, no close friends, no one who visited except lawyers and bodyguards who came only to sign papers or check medical updates. To Elena, he wasn't a billionaire, nor a headline, he was simply a fragile human being whose silent suffering stirred something deep inside her. Each night she entered his room with the same soft determination, warm water, fresh linens, gentle hands, and a whispered promise that she'd take good care of him. She talked to him even though doctors insisted he couldn't hear. She told him about her day, the difficult patients, the funny moments, the times she felt scared, the dreams she kept locked inside. She didn't know why she talked so much, maybe because he couldn't judge her, or perhaps because she felt, in some indescribable way, that he was listening. His stillness didn't frighten her. Instead, it felt like a sacred trust. His room always held a faint scent of antiseptic, mixed with the warmth of lavender oil she secretly dabbed on a cloth near his pillow, something she knew the hospital would never approve, but she believed softness was part of healing too. And so, every night, when the halls grew quiet and nurses whispered over charts, Elena would bathe Adrian's motionless body with the tenderness of someone caring for someone she loved. She wiped his forehead gently, brushed his hair into place, checked the tape around the four-line, repositioned the blanket, and whispered stories of hope into ears that gave no sign of listening. Sometimes she imagined his eyes opening. Sometimes she imagined him smiling or thanking her. Other times she chided herself for daydreaming. He was a billionaire, and she was a nurse from a small apartment she shared with her younger sister. But her heart didn't care about class or money. Her heart cared about the man lying silent beneath the sheets, the man the world saw as powerful but who, in her hands, felt fragile, human, and heartbreakingly alone. One stormy night, as rain lashed against the hospital windows and lightning struck close enough to flicker the lights, Elena entered his room carrying a basin of warm water. She had no idea her life was about to change forever. She placed the basin on the rolling table, dipped the cloth, wrung it gently, and began wiping Adrian's chest, speaking softly the way she always did. "You know," she murmured, "I read today about a flower that blooms only at night. Maybe you're like that, maybe you need darkness to find your moment." She laughed softly at herself, embarrassed even though he couldn't hear. "If you ever wake up, you'll probably think I'm the strangest nurse you've ever met." But at that exact moment, beneath her fingertips, she felt something, a twitch, a faint tightening of muscle, so subtle she thought she imagined it. Her breath caught. She froze. The machines continued their steady beeping. The storm continued roaring outside. She leaned closer, her heart pounding so loud she could hear it in her ears. "Adrian. Can you hear me?" No response. Nothing. Just stillness. She forced herself to breathe. "It's just your nerves reacting," she whispered. "Don't scare yourself." She returned to bathing him, but her hands trembled. She wiped his temples, brushed his hair, and as she leaned forward, his fingers moved again, this time unmistakably. She gasped and stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth. The machines showed slight but definite changes. A fluctuation. A shift. A sign of consciousness doctors said was still weeks away. She hurried closer, tears welling in her eyes. "Adrian. It's Elena. I'm here." His eyelids fluttered, the faintest movement, but real, unbelievably real. She pressed the call button for assistance, but she didn't step away. She couldn't. Something deep inside her told her this moment was meant for her. "You're safe," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I've been here every night. You're not alone." Another flutter. Then his lips parted, not fully, not clearly, but enough that Elena felt her soul surge with an indescribable emotion. She took his hand gently in hers. Warm. Responsive. And then, miraculously, his eyes opened. Slowly, weakly, like someone fighting through layers of darkness, he blinked into the world. His gaze was unfocused at first, but when it settled, the first thing he saw was Elena's tear-bright eyes. He stared at her as if recognizing a voice he had been hearing through dreams. His lips moved again, this time forming a single hoarse whisper. "You." Elena felt her knees weaken, her throat close with emotion. "Yes," she breathed, "I'm here. You're okay. You're okay." He blinked again, fighting to speak, and his voice cracked through the silence like a miracle. "I heard you." Her breath caught. A sob escaped her chest. He continued, in broken whispers, "All this time, your voice kept me alive." Before she could respond, doctors rushed in, flooding the room with lights, commands, and urgency. But even surrounded by voices, machines, and movement, Adrian didn't look away from her, not once. His gaze clung to her like she was the thread that had pulled him back from the darkness. And she felt it, deep and undeniable, that something extraordinary had just been born between them, something that defied logic, class, wealth, and time. Over the next days, as Adrian regained strength, the medical staff marveled at his recovery. Elena became the quiet miracle whispered about in hallways, the nurse whose voice awakened a billionaire. Adrian requested her presence constantly, and though rules were strict, even the head doctor made exceptions, saying, if he responds to her, let her stay. And he did. He responded in ways that amazed everyone. His vitals stabilized when she entered the room. He slept peacefully only when she sat beside him. He ate more when she encouraged him. And every day, he told her more about what he remembered, how he had heard her stories in the darkness, how her voice had become a lifeline, how he felt her hope even when he couldn't move. He said her voice was warm light in a cold world, and Elena, shy and overwhelmed, had no idea how to respond to a billionaire speaking such heartfelt things. But she felt it too, something growing between them like a secret garden blooming in impossible soil, yet the world outside wasn't quiet. News leaked. Media circled. Headlines erupted. Millionaire awakens after 2 months, credits nurse for saving him. The hospital buzzed with gossip. Camera crews gathered outside. Adrian's corporate board panicked, an awakening billionaire with emotional vulnerabilities threatened their power. They wanted him isolated, protected, controlled. But Adrian refused. "She stays," he said firmly, "or I leave." No one dared argue. And Elena, overwhelmed by attention she never wanted, began questioning everything. Why was Adrian so attached to her? Why did he look at her like she was the most important person in his world? Why did her heart race whenever he said her name? But the real turning point came the evening he took her hand, held it with the strength he had regained, and whispered, "When I was in the dark, I heard many voices, but yours was the only one that felt like home." Elena's heart trembled. She felt tears rise again, but this time not from fear, this time from a quiet, powerful joy. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know what the world would say. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty: something miraculous had happened the night he woke up, something that changed both of their lives forever. And as the sun set beyond the hospital windows, painting the world in golden hues, Adrian whispered one more sentence that sealed their story into destiny: "Elena, don't leave. Stay with me, not as my nurse, but as the person who saved my life." And for the first time in her life, Elena understood that miracles weren't always flashes of light or divine interventions. Sometimes they were a voice in the darkness, a touch on the skin, a heart quietly choosing another. Their story was just beginning. And destiny was watching.